Welcome back. I'm back. You're back. Hey, we back. Welcome everyone to this episode on the Ultimate Sports TV, guys. Week 1 of this 2021 NFL season. Starting it off, Week 1 did not disappoint everyone. From Thursday night to Monday Night Football, we saw an incredible week of NFL football, and you only can't wait to get some more. And that is where Week 2 comes in, everyone. Thursday Night Football versus the Washington Football Team and New York Giants, everyone. Thursday Night Football. Can't wait to watch that game. But heading into Week 2, over here at the Ultimate Sports TV, we have to predict that game, everyone. Before we get into predicting all of the Week 2 games in the NFL of this 2021 NFL season, everyone, want to make sure you subscribe to the Ultimate Sports TV for NFL and sometimes NBA content. Like this video for me, share this video and YouTube channel. Then comment down below your Week 2 predictions down in the comment section below, everyone. But now let's get into these Week 2 NFL predictions, everyone. We're going to start over here in the AFC with the Broncos versus the Jaguars, and I'm easily going to take the Broncos here. I just think right now, Vic Fangio may not be the best coach in the world, but he did help win the Broncos a game last week, and so did that defense. And when you look at coaching on the other side of the ball for the Jaguars, they just look really just out of order with Urban Meyer right now. Although Trevor Lawrence did throw for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards last week, they just did not look organized on the Jaguars' offensive or defensive side of the ball versus the Houston Texans, an offense and roster overall and defense that just really looks depleted. So I don't expect that to get better against the Broncos defense that looked really good last week versus the Giants, and the Broncos offense that looked like its run game was able to get going. Courtland Sutton didn't have the best game last week, but now that Jerry Jeudy is hurt, and unfortunately for him, I do think Courtland Sutton could see more targets. And you have Noah Fant out there with an offensive line that blocked well last week versus the Giants defensive line. Then you got Melvin Gordon, who started off the season well. I see the Broncos really offense and defense playing some complementary football in this game versus a terribly coached team right now in the Jaguars. I see the Broncos pulling away from the Jaguars in this game and winning in Week 2 to advance to 2-0 in the season. I think they'll have a fairly good start to the season. Bills versus Dolphins. Look, when I look at a veteran team and well-coached team in the Bills, I just see them bouncing back from a tough loss last week to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I think the Miami Dolphins defense is good and they do blitz a lot, but Josh Allen is good versus the blitz. And I don't think the Dolphins have as many playmakers as the Steelers do on their defensive line. So I don't think the pressure this week on Josh Allen will be as bad. And I think that'll help the Bills offense. I think the Bills will win this game because I like how they're coached. And I think really when you're a well-coached team with a lot of veterans, I think that the next week you really get embarrassed. In Week 1, I think they come out stronger and better in Week 2. That's no indictment on the Dolphins. I just like the Bills offense right now and how they could bounce back. And that secondary, I think it played pretty well last week. Now, granted, you were playing Ben Roethlisberger, who did have a beat-up offensive line, but that secondary did play pretty well, and Ben Roethlisberger by PFF was rated the worst quarterback in Week 1, and you have to credit the Bills secondary for that. Now, the Dolphins, offensively last week, they played kind of mediocre. They only scored 17 points, and you can kind of credit that to the Patriots defense, but when you're playing a Bills offense who does tend to score a lot of points and you blitz a lot, which means Josh Allen could do a bit better versus you, I do think that the Dolphins have to speed up on offense and be able to score more points. Do I think they can do that versus the Bills secondary this week? I do think they'll be able to score more points than last week, but I don't think they'll be able to score enough versus a Josh Allen's Bills team that is well coached by Sean McDermott, and I think they'll bounce back well in Week 2. So I'll take the Bills over the Dolphins in Week 2 in a narrow victory, just because there are still some things concerned about the Bills, and the Dolphins have a good defense, and I do think their offense will be able to score some points. So I think it'll be a narrow victory for the Bills. Steelers versus Raiders. I think I'll take the Steelers in this one. Their pass rush, like I said earlier on my channel after the Bills versus Steelers game, the Steelers pass rush can win you games. You can go check out that video on my channel and when I said more about it, about the Steelers pass rush versus the Bills. But like I said, the Steelers pass rush can win you games, and I think they can do that versus the Raiders offensive line that had a hard time blocking for the run and blocking for the pass last week versus the Ravens. And the Ravens don't have all that many playmakers on their defensive line rushing or defending the run. So I think that could give the Raiders some hard times. Now, Darren Waller, I think versus that Steelers secondary, he's going to have another good game. But when I look at it, I think that Raiders secondary could use a bit work, and I think Ben Roethlisberger and that good Steelers receiving core could take advantage of that. But ultimately, I think this battle could be won in the trenches, and I just see the Steelers having that advantage here, knowing that the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line is beat up kind of, and they're not going to be all that great, and they proved that this year. Also knowing that the Steelers pass rush can win this team games, and I just think the the passing attack on the offensive side of the ball for the Steelers is more diverse and more equipped to win a game for their team than Derek Carr and the Raiders is, with less weapons than the Steelers have. So I'll take the Steelers versus the Raiders in week 2. Browns versus Texans, this is an easy one for me. Although the Texans won last week versus the Jaguars, you were playing a team that looked just out of order last week in the Jaguars. The Browns are not that team. They're very, very well coached. Look, they lost to Kansas City last week in a game they should have won. But like I said, well-coached teams with veterans that know how to lead teams bounce back all the time. And the Browns versus the Texans, I think, is just going to be overpowering for the Texans in this game. The Browns will be able to run the ball. But when you look at Trevor Lawrence last week, aside from the 3 interceptions, which was really due to bad coaching kind of, he threw over 300 yards and he threw 3 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield threw over 300 yards last week, although he didn't throw any touchdowns because his running game just really took over and they utilized it a lot. I see Kevin Stefanski really utilizing this pass game and taking advantage of the Houston Texans pass defense, and I think that'll be a problem for the Texans. Knowing the Browns' offensive line is already good and that helps their run game, and their run game is just automatically going to be good, but this passing game is improving with Baker Mayfield, and this is a matchup where I think Baker Mayfield really takes advantage of. And if you can do that versus the Chiefs secondary, you can do that versus the Texans secondary. So I'll take the Browns over the Texans in this one, and I really do believe in the Browns defense versus the Texans offense in this one. Patriots versus Jets, I'll take the Patriots in this one. I think their defense will do well versus a rookie quarterback. Bill Belichick always does well versus rookie quarterbacks. And I do think that the Patriots are just the better coach team. And look, I do think they could give the Jets offensive line problems. It didn't look very good last week, and they lost Mekhi Becton. I'll take the Patriots to get their first win of the season versus the Jets in week 2. I think the Ravens are going to start off 0-2 versus the Chiefs. Look, when you look at last week versus the Raiders on Monday Night Football, the Ravens just did not make enough passing games over the air with Lamar Jackson, and you have to be able to do that when you're playing the Chiefs, and I just don't see how Lamar Jackson really pulls out and does that again when you have Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce on the other side of the ball with Andy Reid, and they never lose in September, everyone. I'll take the Chiefs over the Ravens in this one just because I think the Chiefs passing game is really going to put them ahead in this game, and I don't think Lamar Jackson in this running game is going to be very consistent in this game as they proved at the end of the game versus the Raiders last week. I think they could get behind in this game and that the Chiefs could get them behind the sticks oftentimes in this game. They will have Tyrann Mathieu back. I just think when you're playing the Chiefs, you have to make sure your passing attack is on point. Baker Mayfield had over 300 yards last week, but the Browns turned the ball over, and that kind of really messed them up. But the Browns were about to win that game because they were really playing complementary football on offense and defense, but the turnovers really just messed that all up. But when you're the Ravens and you're having a hard time really generating offense in the pass game, I don't think that's going to work very well versus the Chiefs. I'll take the Chiefs to start 2-0 in week 2 and the Ravens to start 0-2. Rams versus Colts, I'll take the Rams. When it comes down to this, you have 2 good run games, but 2 run defenses that didn't do well last week. Colts versus the Seattle Seahawks, and they let Chris Carson have a good game. And then you had the Rams, who had David Montgomery have a good game. So I think both run games with the Rams with Darrell Henderson, who had a good game last week, and then Jonathan Taylor, who had a rough game last week, but we still know he's a good running back. I think these 2 run games could have an impact, especially on the Colts side of the ball where they really want to do that. But when you look at it and you have to determine, well, they both have good run games. what breaks the tie, and I think that's the pass game. What pass game is going to be able to put their team over the top? And I'm going to have to say that's the Rams passing game with Matthew Stafford, who really just went off last week. That offensive line held up well, and when you look at the pass defense for the Rams, they did incredible last week, and that's going to give Carson Wentz a hard time, and that's going to limit the plays that the Colts can make on offense to really respond to the LA Rams. Really just explosive pass offense already in week 2, everyone. So I'll take the Rams over the Colts in this one. Bengals versus Bears. I'll take the Bengals in this one to start 2-0. Look, the Bears' offensive line has not been very good. Although the Bengals' defensive line doesn't have all that much depth, they did do good versus a bad offensive line last week versus the Vikings, so I expect them to take advantage of that again. Now, their run defense, not a big fan of that. I think David Montgomery could have another good week, but really, I do like the Bengals secondary. I do like their pass game and their run game, and I expect that all to come into play and take advantage over the Bears in this one for the Bengals to start their season off 2-0. I'll take the Bengals over the Bears in week 2. Titans versus Seahawks. Look, you can just tell that the Titans are having a rough time without Arthur Smith. I'm going to take the Seahawks here. The Titans are still trying to figure their offense out. Arthur Smith was a very, very big part to this offense, and he meant a lot. And Julio Jones still hasn't really meshed with this offense or Ryan Tannehill because of the limited practice time, really. When I look at it, the Seahawks run defense did well versus a good running back in Jonathan Taylor, and I kind of expect them to do good again versus Derrick Henry. Now, while I don't expect them to shut Derrick Henry down this week like the Cardinals did last week, because I don't think the Seahawks have those playmakers like Chandler Jones or like J.J. Watt to do that, so I don't expect Derrick Henry to get shut down, but I do expect the Seahawks pretty solid run defense, as they proved last week, to be able to make key stops and get Derrick Henry and the Titans behind the sticks, which could make Ryan Tannehill have to play from behind and really utilize that pass game where they really kind of look clueless right now. If you're going versus a Seahawks pass game that looked really dominant last week, while Russell Wilson threw for 4 touchdowns and over 200 yards, he only had 18 passing attempts, and this is the Titans secondary that didn't look great versus Kyler Murray last week, or DeAndre Hopkins, or Christian Kirk. So I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one, just because when it comes down to it, I think when it balances out, I think the Seahawks have the better run game. No, they don't have the better run game, but they do have a good run game that I don't think will be able to be stopped by the Titans. Neither will that pass game. And that Titans run game, look, they can do well, and I think they will do well at times in this game, better than last week. I just think the Seahawks run defense will be able to get them behind the sticks numerous times in this game, and I think that'll be beneficial for them in this game, while throwing the ball and forcing the Titans to really come back up at you with the passing game when they're really struggling with that right now. Now let's go over to the NFC side. Thursday night football, Washington football team. I'll take the Washington football team over the Giants in this one. I just like the Washington football team's defense versus the Giants run game in this one. Saquon Barkley did not have a good week behind a bad Giants offensive line last week versus a very, very good Broncos run defense that featured Von Miller really just having a great day. I don't expect that to change versus a Washington football team defensive line that also looked really good last week again, and defense overall did make some plays. I expect that to be evident again versus the Giants. I think defense could come into play because I think both offenses will be kind of limited. Will Saquon Barkley play? And if he does, can he be effective? And if Saquon Barkley's not effective, will Daniel Jones be effective? Can Taylor Heineke get the ball to Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and all his playmakers? When I look at it on the offensive side of the ball, I trust the Washington football team more, and I trust their defense, given their matchup, to really be able to shut down the Giants offense. I'll take the Washington football team over the Giants. I'll take the Saints over the Panthers. I just think they're the more well-coached team this time. Look, the Panthers only narrowly beat the Jets last week, and I think matchup-wise, the Saints have a better defense than the Jets, and I think they could take advantage of an offensive line that didn't look too well, and their secondary looked pretty good. Jameis Winston, I expect him to have another good week. I'll take the Saints over the Panthers in this one. I'll take the 49ers over the Eagles. Now, look, I think it's going to be a very, very close game just because I think Jalen Hurts is having an amazing start to the year. I think that Eagles offensive line looks pretty good, and I think that could come into play. But when I look at it, when I look at the offense and defense that can make more plays, I think that's the 49ers in this case. I'll take them over the Eagles in a narrow win. I'll take the Buccaneers over the Falcons in a win here. Look, Falcons passing game, I think they will be able to take advantage of the Buccaneers' kind of vulnerable passing defense right now. So I think it could end up being a close game at some point. But really, I think the Buccaneers, with their pass rush, will really be able to disrupt what the Falcons really want to do on offense, whether it's getting the ball off quickly behind that bad offensive line for Matt Ryan or running the ball. So I think the defensive line for the Buccaneers could really make some plays in this game. But really, the Buccaneers are going versus the Falcons defense. They're going to have a day. The passing game is going to be good. The running game could really, really be good in this one. I'll take the Buccaneers in this one over the Falcons. The Cardinals versus the Vikings. I'll take the Cardinals here. Their pass rush really proved to be existing and really just getting existing pressure last week versus the Titans offensive line. That's not bad. JJ Watt and Chandler Jones, they looked really disruptive last week, and I like what that secondary was able to do, and I think Kyler Murray could really take advantage of what and how vulnerable this Vikings defense looked last week versus the Bengals. I'll take the Cardinals over the Vikings in this one. Maybe in a close game, but really I just think the Cardinals are on a roll right now, and on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, they look really, really explosive, and I expect that to keep going versus a Vikings team that on offense, their offensive line is really lacking, and that's not really good problem to have right now versus the Cardinals defensive line. And their secondary, it looked vulnerable last week to Joe Burrow. Just imagine what it'll look like to Kyler Murray, who you're really afraid to run with, but who you're really afraid to have run the ball, but you also have him throwing the ball to DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk. So that's going to present a problem for the Vikings. I'll take the Cardinals over the Vikings in this one. For the last game, I'll take the Packers over the Lions. I think, again, with veteran teams that are well coached, they'll bounce back the next week. They have really just an emotional letdown the previous week. I'll take the Packers in this one. I really like them over this Lions defense. They played a good defense last week. They're playing not so good one this week. I think the run game will get going, especially Aaron Rodgers will have a good bounce back game. And look, can this defense make the plays it needs to? We'll have to see that. But ultimately, I think the Packers offense puts them over the top in this game. Cowboys versus Chargers. I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. Look, DeMarcus Lawrence broke his foot in practice. That's going to be very, very detrimental to this Cowboys pass defense and pass rush, really. DeMarcus Lawrence was such an impact last week being a disruptor and is always a disruptor and made so many ways for other guys on that Cowboys defensive line to really get pressure while he was getting double teams the whole time. This is very, very bad for the Cowboys because you can't get pressure on a good quarterback in Justin Herbert, and that's going to allow their pass game to really make plays over the Cowboys' really bad pass defense. While I do think this will be a close game because I think Ezekiel Elliott will be able to run the ball a bit more in this game, and the Cowboys' passing offense will be able to make plays. I just think when it comes down to whose defense can make the better stops versus a good pass defense, either in the Chargers or the Cowboys pass offense, I think that's the Chargers defense, mainly because I think with Joey Bosa, they can get better pass rush off, and without DeMarcus Lawrence, I don't think the Cowboys pass rush can really make as many plays versus Justin Herbert, everyone. So look, I think because of the pass rush, I think it'll come to that by disrupting who's ever passing game, just because I think pass rush is what you need to stop both of these passing games. And also, I think the Chargers secondary is just a tad bit better than the Cowboys. It could come down to whose pass game gets the better look in this game, and I think that'll be the Chargers pass game, just because of the circumstances that the Cowboys have ran into with their pass rush situation. So I'll take the Chargers in this one, just reiterating it again, because look, the Cowboys pass rush needs DeMarcus Lawrence. He's not going to be in this game. He's not going to be in there for the rest of the season. So look, it's going to be very, very detrimental. They're not going to be able to make as many stops and be as disruptive to an incredible passer in Justin Herbert. So that's really going to affect their defense, and it's going to allow the Chargers passing game to make plays over a weak Cowboys pass defense. And it could come down to whose passing game could make the most plays. And given the circumstances, I'll give that win to the Chargers, and I'll give the overall win to the Chargers. I'll take the Broncos over the Jaguars, the Bills over the Dolphins, the Steelers over the Raiders, the Browns over the Texans, the Patriots over the Jets, the Chiefs over the Ravens, the Rams over the Colts, the Bengals over the Bears, the Seahawks over the Titans, the Cowboys over the Chargers, Washington football team over the New York Giants, the Saints over the Panthers, the 49ers over the Eagles, the Bucs over the Falcons, the Cardinals over the Vikings, and then the Packers over the Lions, everyone. Give your Week 2 NFL predictions down in the comment section below, everyone. Other than that, this has been Malik Hicks, a.k.a. The Ranker, the Ultimate Sports TV, signing off. Peace out, and I'll see you on the other side.